beautiful. And what I really want to know is, what's good in your life today? I'm Kia, and this is the season 3 finale of the Female Veterans Podcast. I am so excited to have Aimee Morgan with me. She is a talented writer-director from Hollywood. She is an Army vet, a dedicated wife, and a truly incredible person. Aimee has had films in every major festival around the world, and she's even won some. So she's incredibly talented, and I'm so excited that she's here with me today. Welcome, Aimee. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's an honor to be asked.
I'm so excited to hear your story. So my first question for you is, what made you join the military?
Well, I grew up as a military brat, but I always wanted to be an artist. So I never really thought I would join the military. It wasn't in my sights, so to speak, until I was of college age, and I found myself working 2 jobs, trying to go to college on my own, and being homeless. And after a while, it just kind of like something had to give. And so I just kind of looked around and I was like, what are my options? And I thought back to the military, and I thought back to some of the women that I knew while growing up who were in the Army. And they were kind of like mentors and just really badass women. And I looked up to them. And I thought, let's just go for it. Serve my country, get some college money, get my life back on track, have some fun, and hopefully travel a little bit.
That makes a lot of sense. Which branch did you choose?
I chose the Army, but I grew up around the Navy.
Go Navy. What made you choose the Army?
Well, being a Navy brat, I went on like aircraft carriers and stuff to visit my stepdad and different things. And I'm not a big fan of the ocean.
That makes sense.
So I thought, well, Army looks pretty badass. And I knew women who were in the Army while growing up. And that just seemed like the next best thing.
Right on. So what was boot camp like for you?
Well, it's funny because when I decided to join the Army, I just walked into the recruiting office and, found a recruiter and just basically said, look, I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to suck. Just tell me what basic's going to be like. And don't lie to me, because I know what the history of recruiters is, what they're legendary for. Basic was pretty much like I thought it was going to be. I don't like to run, so I knew that was going to be a big challenge for me. But I ended up enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I know boot camp was pretty tough for me, but I felt the same way. Like I ended up kind of being sad when boot camp was over, but it was like saying goodbye to the friendships that I made and being aware that I would likely never see most of those girls ever again.
Right. Yeah. And so knowing that I was going on to AIT after that, I knew I was going with some of the same girls. So that helped with that. Mm-hmm. That same way. It was pretty cool to kind of like find this family, this new tribe, this sisterhood that I had never really had before. And I really didn't expect it.
I felt that too. Well, I came from private school, so I had sort of sisters from that experience. And so I knew that, it could go either way with women. It could be awful or it could be great. But going into the Navy, I really didn't know what to expect, and it turned out to be really great.
Why did you choose the Navy?
Oh, I chose the Navy because I was rebelling against my mom. She wanted me to go to the Army, and it was enough to me that she sort of put going to the military on my life agenda when it hadn't been on my radar. And so I being a dutiful child and realizing that it had always kind of been her dream to go to the military, she sort of got to live vicariously through me by having the experience. So I chose the Navy because the recruiter seemed really chill and fun, and he sold it to me based on how much fun I would have. And I really bought into that hook, line, and sinker. So I went to the Navy, and I did have a lot of fun. He actually didn't lie about that.
Well, that's good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me more about your military experience. What was AIT like?
So I went in the 90s. So basic was not integrated. It was only females. Mm-hmm. And AIT was integrated. So it was kind of weird to then go to like the male-female thing. You know, it's like we all lived in the same barracks, went to chow together, classes together. It was fun because I've always been a tomboy. So I kind of, felt very comfortable being one of the guys. So it was fun. Again, the running, not a thing I liked. But, and you got a little more freedom at AIT. And that was nice.
Yeah, that's like how Corps School was. I mean, we were still in separate barracks, but actually I went to boot camp in the 90s also. And our company, which is what it was called back then, was integrated. And we were one among the first in the Navy at Great Lakes to be an integrated. I was actually selected to be a part of that new thing that they were starting. So it was interesting to have that right off the bat because I wasn't expecting it. So it was like, we didn't have a brother company. We had actually half of our company were guys. And then when we left their barracks was just below ours in the same building. And so when I went to A school, hospital, Corps School, it was an all-female barracks. And so that was a little bit different. It was a little bit reverse for me.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm. So tell me more about your military experience.
Let's see. Basic was at Fort Lost in the Woods, Missouri, which is actually Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do it there anymore. And then AIT was Fort Lee, Virginia. And I was a quartermaster, so we went to supply school. And that was really cool. It was a lot more laid back in AIT, and I enjoyed it much more than basic. But I made some really good friends that I'm still friends with today, 20 plus years later.
That's incredible. I love the Navy for that. I still have 20-year-old friends.
It's so cool because I don't really have a lot of friends, like say from high school or growing up. It's mostly like military friends.
That's really cool. I love that.
And then I was stationed at Fort Knox in Kentucky. And I was in the first groups of women to be stationed there. So that was very interesting.
So how many women were stationed with you then?
In my group, there were 5 of us.
Wow. There were how many women on the base in total? Do you know? Or could you make a guess?
Fort Knox I know a lot has changed, but at the time it was one of the largest military installations that we had in the Army. And so there were these huge sections of Fort Knox. I really don't know how many women were there. I know most of the women that I came in contact with, if they weren't in my small little group, they were civilian workers. So like the secretaries or say the laundry company from off post, there would be a woman in that group. Or a woman in the mess hall who was a civilian worker, things like that. There weren't a lot of women actually who were in the military there.
I see. Okay. So a small group of women. Did you, how did you get along with everybody? Were the guys cool? Because sometimes you hear the guys didn't want the girls there, they're rude, or they were so worried about all the sexual harassment training that they had to go through, or sometimes they were harassing, or sometimes they were just cool.
Yeah, I experienced both sides of it. When I got there, people seemed okay. And then when I actually got to my assigned place, I was a supply sergeant, and I was the only female there. And I worked with all male officers and sergeants, the first sergeant, the captain, they were all male. And then all the male trainees, because this was a training post.
Wow.
So I worked with male trainees who were learning to be scouts and tankers. So that was really interesting. A lot of the drill sergeants, I got a lot of crap from them. There were a couple who were really super cool. But there were some that liked to remind me every single day, they didn't like this. It wasn't good. I wasn't supposed to be there. I needed to be in the kitchen. I needed to go find a husband, etc.
Oh my.
Just constantly. But you just have to have thick skin. And it wears on you after a while, but, you just have to move on.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. That's one of the big things I think we could all agree on as veteran females is you have to have a thick skin.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. What I thought was interesting was, so I'm working with male trainees every day. They're coming in for supplies and different things. And when I was in basic training, we could not get out no matter what. Basically you had to try to kill yourself.
Yeah.
That's the reality. And even then, you get sent to a clinic and then you'd come back and you'd be recycled or something. So when I got to Fort Knox, these male trainees, they were dropping like flies. And I was like, well, what has changed in like a year and a half? They would just like be sitting out because they didn't feel like doing things. And they would be asking, to be sent home. And it was just like, okay, let's go sign your paperwork. And I thought that was really interesting. I'm like, really, guys? I mean, you're not going to tough it out? I mean, I made it through. I'm a chick, I did this. Thought that was interesting. But.
That is interesting. Well, I definitely remember a couple of years, I think it was, after I got out of basic, they introduced these stress cards, or you could raise your hand or something and say, I'm overwhelmed. And I was like appalled. I can see the good in it, but I couldn't, I was like, what?
How is that enough? When I first heard about that, I thought it was a joke, on the Duffel blog. I can't believe they exist. I wonder if they still use them.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know that they were around for quite a while. So you're on Fort Knox and you have to deal with, it sounds like chauvinists, male chauvinists, and just men that just didn't have the proper respect for women. How did you cope with that? Just by developing a certain toughness?
Pretty much, yes. At one point, somebody was like, you're just so stoic all the time and stuff. Maybe you should work for the DMV. And I'm like, well, you put up with a lot of stuff as a female in this position. So, F you. I got to do what I got to do. But there was a lot of sexual harassment too. A lot of misogyny, stuff like that. But this was the 90s. And earlier you mentioned something about sexual harassment training. And honestly, I don't even know if that existed.
Wow.
If it did, we were in around the same time, so I don't know. But if it did, I didn't see any results from it.
That's horrible. Because I remember going through it in boot camp, and they showed you a million videos, STD videos and videos about absolutely everything under the sun.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing, learning about fraternization and who you couldn't connect with, and sexual harassment and all of that stuff. So I remember actually seeing that training. And then I think we did it again in A school. but it must have been relatively new, I imagine, because at that time, women were just going on like frigates and different, it was like the role of women was expanding rapidly during our time.
Right.
And so a lot of these guys, I feel like, and I don't know if other women who have served feel this way too, a lot of these guys just had difficulty adapting. Absolutely. And so it came out in various ways, whether it was through actually harassing and stalking or through just that misogyny, like you said, or just small microaggressions towards women, just little things, little comments, that were inappropriate. I mean, I was lucky. Most of the men that I worked with were really great at Great Lakes, but I did deal with, minor cases of sexual harassment, minor situations where I felt uncomfortable, but largely, I didn't deal with any of that. I had lots of guy friends and I'm grateful to them to this day because they protected me a lot in situations where things could have went wrong for a young girl.
Yes, and I had a similar experience. There were a couple of guys who were really cool, and I know it was because they were around that, some things never happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very thankful to them. I'm still friends with them to this day.
Likewise, my guys, they rule. They've been an amazing part of my life for these last years. And when we see each other again, it's like no time. It's like such a happy experience, and they're all over the country now. So, so tell me more about what it was like for you.
I don't know. I'm glad I was in. I learned a lot. I grew up a lot. I made some lifelong friends. I wanted to make sure that I found an MOS that would translate once I got out of the military, because I didn't join as a careerist.
Right, me either.
So the work was good. I would just say the biggest challenges were some of the personalities and the sexism,
Yeah.
But other than that, it was just really cool. I just loved wearing the uniform. I loved being part of it. It was like being part of a family, men and women.
Mm-hmm.
I gained brothers and sisters that I'll always have.
That's beautiful. I definitely feel the same way too. So, tell me about your transition out. What was that like for you?
That was a bit rough. So I got out in the late 90s and moved to Southern California. And, I'd always been taught, having served your country and, that's like a good thing. That's a positive thing. People will always want to hire you and this and that.
Yes, I believed that too.
Yeah, so I came to Southern California and went back to college because I always knew I wanted to go back to college, finish, and move on. And I started looking for work at the same time, and it was very difficult. And finally somebody just basically told me, "Look, you've got the Army on your resume." I said, "Yeah," and they're like, "No, that's not a good thing. So you need to take that off because people don't want to know about that. They're going to think you're crazy or you've got some kind of, PTSD thing going on, or they don't like the fact that you handle weapons, that you know how to shoot guns. They don't want to hear about that." Okay. So once I did that, I started getting work.
So someone advised you to take your military history off of your resume so that you could find work.
Absolutely. Remove it from my resume and don't mention it.
Wow.
And, my husband, he was a scout. And he was literally told by a well-known company in Southern California that they hire people with prison records versus people with military records. And I don't know how he justified that, and he should have sued them, but he didn't. But I've heard that story more than once.
I've heard it too. Yeah. And you know what? It's so shameful to me. It is so shameful to me. I mean, I don't understand that. And I went through it too. When I first got out, it was super easy for me to get a job. As soon as I moved away from Illinois, where I was stationed, oh my God, it completely changed. When I went to Arizona, for a year and I was doing studies there. I was going to college. And it was impossible for me to find work. I finally took it off of my resume to see. And I was able to get hired through a temp agency. And then the company they placed me with actually hired me on. And I worked there until I left. I decided to leave Arizona after a year because I didn't like that. And I went to Chicago. I went back to Chicago area, but I moved into the city. And it was the same thing where if I had it on my resume, then I didn't get called. The minute I would take it off my resume, I'd be like, oh my God, that's right. I can't have this on my resume. I forgot. It's just, it turns out it's just like Arizona. So I had to remove it off my resume. And then I was able to start finding work.
That's just incredible. Because I mean, my whole life I've been taught, that's a really good thing, serving your country. And it shows that you've got discipline and you're a hard worker and you follow directions, et cetera, et cetera. But if I had stayed like in the Kentucky area, after I got out of Fort Knox, it probably would have been much easier for me to find work. But it wouldn't have been work that I wanted to do, because what I wanted to do was out here. So,
yes. And so did you meet your husband when you were in the military?
No, I did. And I went into the military telling myself that I was going to be single for 4 years. I was not going to date anybody in the military. Was not interested in a military guy. Sorry, military guys. And then I met this guy who was like nobody I'd ever met before. And he was kind of a weirdo and a psycho, and people were scared of him, but he was funny, and smart, and well-read. Yeah, I eventually let him take me out.
That's so cute.
And we've been together 25 years.
Oh, congratulations, you two. That's amazing. It's rare these days anyway.
Yes. That's one of the things I'm really proud of is that we've stayed together and we actually still enjoy each other's company.
Well, that's even the most important thing, I think, beyond that. So after you got out, you and your husband had difficulty finding work. How did you guys were able to overcome that by just removing your military history off your resumes?
That was the first step. And that's when we first noticed the shift. As soon as we stopped talking about the military or the veteran status or anything like that, get called in for interviews and get jobs.
Mm-hmm. So sad.
It really is. And I mean, the thing is, I moved to Southern California, so it's very liberal and, people just they didn't want to hear about that kind of stuff, because you're not supposed to go to war. You're not supposed to fight. You're not supposed to use guns. And then 2 years later, 9/11 happened. And then there was a different shift. All of a sudden, people were supporting the military and supporting the troops. And it was kind of okay to have it back on your resume. Mm-hmm. Just don't say too much about it.
Yes, I felt that too. I felt that way too. Now I feel like I could put it on the top of my resume and people would really appreciate that. But there definitely was a time that I didn't put it on my resume. And I recalled the shift too after 9/11 and everyone started to say, hey, thank you for your service. And while I love that, and I think that's really incredible, now I feel like the next shift that needs to happen is towards helping veterans that are living on the streets and getting them off the streets, especially female veterans, because people don't realize how bad that situation is because they don't realize that the prevailing perception is that veterans are men. And so when the women are not getting donations, they're not getting clothes, they're not getting boots, a lot of them have suffered from trauma, a lot of them, or military sexual trauma. And a lot of them have PTSD. And so they're down on their luck. And it's just horrible to me to see that someone who has served their country has deployed. And because we have all these endless wars now, and they come back home and their basic needs are not being met. I mean, I think as veterans, we all deserve better than that. So it's one of the reasons why I created this podcast, actually.
I love that because I've always, I have a background where I was homeless for a while, but I've always been interested in women veterans and women homeless veterans. And I started doing research before I went back to school because that was something I wanted to do a documentary on. And that's still something I would love to interview women veterans about, that, their experiences and what they need, that's always so to my heart.
Oh, well, we align on that. And so that's incredible. It's not surprising that we found each other and connected. So I would love to talk more about your transition out. Were there any other struggles that you had?
Well, I mean, we didn't have a lot of notice when we were getting out. I mean, I got out and then I waited another year for my husband to get out.
Oh, okay.
And so I was ready, but he wanted to re-enlist. So he did, so we could go to Germany. And then he had some major health problems. And so he was just quietly on the list to be released all of a sudden. So that was a big shock for us because we were not prepared.
Wow.
It was kind of like, okay, so you're too damaged. We can't use you anymore. We've done all this to you. We're just going to let you go. And I was like, I don't think so. So I had to threaten to go to CNN and all this crap. The Pentagon got involved, et cetera, et cetera. And because I wanted to make sure he was going to get health care because they were just going to release him. And he'd been in like 15 years.
15 years? Why did they suddenly say he was too damaged to be in? And why did you need to go to CNN? Like, what happened? I'm shocked.
Well, long story short, basically he was part of some experiments that they will not cop up to. But the funny thing is that everybody who was involved in doing the experiments and who were in the experiments, they all have documentation. They have certificates. They even have a T-shirt. I mean, it's just bizarre. Photographs. So I had to threaten to go to CNN with all of that because I was not going to have them release him out of the military after 15 years with nothing. Because he had some major health problems. And what happened was he was really good at hiding them for a long time. And he has TBI. And he was very good at hiding that. And they got to a point where he couldn't hide it anymore. And his sergeant major insisted on a doctor.
What is TBI?
Oh, a traumatic brain injury.
Oh, I see. Oh, no. And so let me back up for a second.
Okay.
So the military had him in a program where they tested on him? Did they do stuff to him? And then deny it?
Can you ask that again? You kind of went out.
Oh, okay. My question is, he has a traumatic brain injury, and he was part of a special group. Did the military test things on him? Did they do something to him that caused this? Is that what I'm understanding? Or do I have that wrong?
No, yes. They put him on a platform with 4 other guys in the middle of the desert and set off C4 explosives next, like 26 inches from their head all day.
What?
For many, many weeks. this is something people aren't talking about, and that I'm working on a project about it because I'm just sick of it. It's just disgusting what they did to my husband and the other guys that were there and how they deny it. And my husband was going to be sent to jail for lying when he told his story. And that's why the Pentagon got involved. So it was like, we're going to release you from the military that you wanted to make your career. We're not going to give you any health care. And we're going to send you to jail for lying about something you say happened to you. They tried to say that it happened to him and he was on vacation. And that's just not something you do when you go on vacation.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so. That is, I wish, I really wish that I could say that that's unbelievable. But unfortunately, I hear a lot of stories. I hear stories of people who tell me their stories since I started the podcast that I don't even publish, because whether they don't want it published or whatever, but they want to tell me their story. And I'm fine with that. But I hear incredibly horrific things, more than you can possibly imagine. And this is absolutely an incredibly horrific thing. Like, I just can't imagine explosions by my head. Like, what were they trying to find out?
It was about hearing during wartime. I kid you not. They were each wearing a headset, and one side of the headset was completely drilled out. I don't know about you, but I'm thinking, well, if that side's drilled out, it's not going to be very protective of my hearing. And so he has no hearing in that ear as a result.
Oh my God.
But all this stuff happened in the 90s, and he holds the record for the most amount of blasts that someone has sat through. Because some people went AWOL, some people unfortunately died. There's all kinds of stuff that went on. And so when he was finally able to get out, they sent him on to Germany to his next duty station. So he had this major, head injury and all these issues, and they just sent him off to go to Germany and continue his work like he would normally do.
My God.
There were no brain clinics, no brain injury clinics, no TBI testing, none of that stuff. And so he just sucked it up and moved on. And he had some serious anger problems because of it, and because that, tends to happen.
Yeah.
And so they just worked around it. And it wasn't until a few years later when I met him that he was really just not really able to completely hide what was going on anymore.
That explains why people thought he was scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because he would do things that no one else would. He would jump out of the fourth floor window. It's like, just different things, just crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been an interesting journey. It's been very frustrating, but it took a long time for him to get any kind of medical treatment for that. And so the soldiers that are coming back now from, the current war, they have all these trauma clinics and all this stuff for, brain injuries, and he just didn't have any of it. They basically told him he had a really bad migraine.
That is just, so bogus. I really do. I wish that I could say that I can't believe it. It's unbelievable. But unfortunately, it is. It seems that it's very common for things like this to happen. It's like almost like what's going on right now with the burn pits and the registry and the people who are having all the lung issues, like my dear friend Christina, who is, as we all know from a recent episode, is clinging to life. Like, she's fighting for her life right now because of how the government denied what was wrong with her, even when she had second opinions, and they said, we don't take that. So it's like, when you hear these stories, you can't, but like it like punches a hole in your heart because these are human beings. These are people that we love and we care about, our friends, our husbands, that they went into the military to serve their country. And now they've come out, because they want healthy people in, right? To
Right.
fight. And then we come out, and even myself on a much minor scale, come out damaged. And then they want to say, no, we're not responsible for it. And you have to fight. So it's funny too, because we've been trained to fight, and then they make us fight them. So the Pentagon got involved. He threatened to go to CNN. And what was the outcome? Did he end up getting health care? Please tell me he got health care.
Yes, what they did was the Pentagon decided that once he was completely released to the military, he had a right to sue the military. And in the 90s, that wasn't really something you heard about a lot.
Yeah, no.
And I have spent like 20 years trying to find someone interested. I mean, I even contacted Gloria Allred's office just to try to get like a referral. And I got laughed at. And
no one would touch
was
it.
Really upsetting. So no one will touch it. And like I said, I have documentation, I have photographs, all this stuff, and nobody will touch it. So he gets health care now. But what they did was they decided they were going to put him on a temporary retirement list for 5 years. So one time each year, he was sent to a different hospital and a different doctor that he'd never met before. And they were to determine whether or not his health was getting better or worse. So for 5 years, we didn't know what was going to end up happening. He's now retired. Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, that was interesting.
So I can just imagine how all of this affected you coming out and trying to transition into civilian life and having to go through these struggles.
Yeah, it's very, very stressful. And now I see kind of like people, the whole caregiver term, and that's part of what I do with him, just to make sure, he gets his appointments, his medication, this and that. It's really stressful. It's like having a child or something, because you have to make sure, they get stuff done they're supposed to do, and then get my own stuff done. So.
Mm-hmm. And obviously you're working. You have lots of projects and stuff. So yeah. I guess my next question is regarding your husband. Is this an illness that progressively gets worse over time?
Yes. And he has a lot of connected illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned the burn pits and stuff. One side of his lungs does not work. It's completely black. And then he has like maybe the half of one that works well. And there's just all kinds of things. That's just an example. But he's got a great sense of humor, kind of twisted. And
I love those.
Yeah. Gotta love that gallows humor.
I do love it.
Got from the military. No, but I mean, if you were to meet him, you had no idea because he doesn't really talk about it. But they gave him every pill under the sun, of course, because he goes to the VA.
Yes.
That, of course, has caused issues. So I'm just glad, I'm thankful that we've been able to hang out together all these years.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. Well, I think that you guys are amazing. First of all, how rare is it to meet and marry in the military and last? That's actually a pretty big deal.
And last, yeah.
Yeah, and you've had to overcome all of these obstacles just trying to transition out, and while being a primary caregiver for your husband. And all the while, you were going to film school, and now you've built a successful career in a town that's pretty hard to build a career in. So I guess my next question is about that. How did you get into film?
Well, I always wanted to write and direct. Like when I was a kid, I loved movies, I loved art, and I would watch movies and I would see, written and directed by. But I never saw a woman's name next to that. Mm. And then, of course, as I got older, I started seeing women's names. But I was like, you know what? I can do that too. It doesn't matter that I'm a girl. So I always wanted to be a writer-director and bring stories to life that, we didn't see. Because there was a lot of stuff out there that I didn't resonate with. And because I didn't have the greatest upbringing. And so, you see these perfect little families and stuff and comedies and dramas and this and that. And I'm like, that's not my life. So I wanted to shine a light on people and stories that are underrepresented. But when I first came out here and went back to school, I worked as a web designer, and then I moved into digital marketing strategy. So I did that for many, many years with some well-known brands. And then I got to a point in my late 30s, and all of a sudden I found myself, I had to have 3 different surgeries within 4 months.
Oh my gosh. What happened?
They were just totally unrelated. Just 3 different things kind of came up, and I was like, oh, wow. Because, I was pretty healthy up until then. And I started thinking, I was like, I knew I wasn't going to do this digital marketing stuff my whole life. I just wanted to get to a point where I could then shift, go to film school, and do what I've always wanted to do. And so that was kind of the time where it was like, now's the time to do it or shut up about it. So after I got well, I just went to another transitional phase and decided to go back to school, and I went to film school 6 years ago. And I still take classes every now and then. Like I just finished up at UCLA. But I've been making stuff since 2013, 2014.
That's incredible. What a journey. And it's really impressive that, we're around the same age, that you just said, you know what, I am going to just go for this thing that I dreamt about when I was a kid, and I'm just going to go do it. I love that. I had kind of a similar situation. Not sure if I've mentioned on the podcast, but a couple of years ago, I had to have a kidney taken out. I had a nephrectomy, and it changed my life. It completely changed my life. It was like the first domino of a bunch of dominoes that went down that ended up changing my life, actually. And when I woke up from the surgery, because I was really nervous going into it, I thought I was 5 classes away from finishing my second master's degree in forensic accounting.
Wow.
And I woke up and I thought, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. That's not my purpose. I need to add value in a different way. And I ended up going down this path that led me to this podcast, because what I'm most passionate about is female veterans, sharing our stories, breaking the culture of silence surrounding military service, especially for women, and helping homeless veterans get off the street. And that's what I do now. So I had like a similar experience where it was a transition where I just was like, after surgery, that I was just like, you know what, I need to change this. And I don't care how old I am. I'm going back to work. And I was a stay-home mom at the time too. So I was just like, I'm going back to work and I'm going to do these things.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Oh, thank you very much. So I want to hear so much more about, your projects. I know probably everyone wants to hear about your projects and what you work on.
The big project I've been working on that I'm hoping to just completely launch in 2020 is a digital series. It's a comedy drama about women in the Army, and it's called Bravo Charlie. And basically, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook, Bravo Charlie Series. I just finished shooting a trailer because we're going to have a crowdfunding campaign in March. And March is Women Veterans Month. So I thought that would be kind of a good time to do it.
That's a nice touch.
Thanks. But it's all about girl empowerment, sisterhood, you know, very, very, very loosely based on my own experiences. It's funny. There's some serious notes to it, but everyone who reads the scripts seems to really enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to it.
It sounds amazing. I will definitely watch it. And do you have any information you can give us now about the crowdfunding, or should we just watch your social media so we can contribute?
I would say please follow the social media, and I will have updates there, but I can also send you more information.
Awesome. So you guys, you know that I will get all of Aimee's info and put it in the show notes in the description box of the episode so that you can follow her on all of her social media and know when we can help her bring this show to life, because I bet we'd all really love it. And of course, we should support a veteran sister who's doing big things, I think. So it's been amazing to talk to you. And I know I've taken up a lot of your time and you're a busy woman. So I'm going to wrap it up, but I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Do you have any advice, tips, tricks, or strategies for success or to thrive in life for our veteran sisters?
Well, something I always say is figure out what it is you truly want to do with your life and find a way to do it. Do what you want to do. Don't live for other people. That's one of the things I usually say. Also, if you find you need help, whether it's like, mental health or other kinds of support, please seek those out. I like the fact that mental health issues are out in the open. People are talking about it more. It's not as in the dark as it used to be. And the VA actually has some good programs. They now have some good programs for women veterans. Thank God, because It's always been that way.
That's right.
I mean, I still run into things where I'm like, what the hell? But,
Right. But it is the VA system, and we know it's a broken system. So
absolutely.
The more they try to do the right thing by veterans, the better. It's just always at a snail's pace.
Yes, unfortunately, it's like that hurry up and wait thing that you learned in the military.
And then it perpetuates at the VA. And
you're going to have to fight for yourself. So whether it's your health or your career, my personal experience, you're going to have to fight for yourself. You've got to be your strongest advocate.
I love that. I love that advice. No one's going to fight for you like you would fight for you.
It's one of my, I really enjoy this filmmaker. His name is Mark Duplass. And he had this speech at Sundance a couple of years ago. And he was like, you need to know the cavalry is not coming. And, you've got to do it yourself. You've got to save yourself. You've got to elevate yourself and then help others.
Oh, wow. That's powerful. That's really powerful. Oh my gosh, Aimee, thank you so much for coming and sharing some time and telling your story. It's incredible to think that at one point in your life you were homeless, and now look at what your life is and what you're doing. And you're helping veteran sisters by creating shows that show stories about us, and that's what I'm all about. So I really love that. And I thank you so much for being here.
I'm also working on a documentary about women veterans. So if anybody's interested, I'll give you the information.
So again, check out the show notes. I'm interested.
Oh, awesome.
So any way I can support and help out, I am down for my veteran sisters. And so just let me know. I'll put all the information in the show notes in the description for anyone who wants to reach out. And with that, I'm really going to wrap it up. Okay. I want to say to everyone listening, Thank you so much for sharing your time and energy listening to this podcast. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for listening. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you next time.